the curve on biodiversity loss, right? A system that it's only local systems where we can have gender equity that delivers more nutritious foods to people. Okay, so we are here to listen to stories, and we are calling this the Great Food Puzzle, right? So I would like to invite Brent Loken, if he's ready, to walk us through the big framing of what we're going to be discussing today. This is going to be an informal discussion. It's not a panel with questions and answers. It's just stories that we will hear from on-the-ground action. But Brent, why don't you carry us forward about the Great Food Puzzle? What is that puzzle? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Joel. And thank you, everybody, for being here to have this conversation about how we get to the place-based implementation, how we try and figure out how these actions that we're talking about work on the ground in different parts of the world. I'm going to do some high-level framing to start with, and then we're just going to have a conversation after that. Before we begin, though, we've got a short video to show you which frames some of the issues and some of the work that WWF is doing on this topic. So what we're teasing out today is how we solve that puzzle, because implementation will look very differently in different places. Now, before we do that, understanding the pace and the scale of the problem is very important. And what this figure demonstrates right here is how quickly we need to move. And I think it's hard to wrap our heads around the fact of how fast we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in all sectors. If we look at this, we're at about 58 gigatons right now today, and by 2050 we have to get down to essentially net zero emissions across all sectors. That means a halving of global greenhouse gas emissions between now and 2030, a halving again between 2030 and 2040, and a halving again by 2050. And not only do we need to reduce emissions extremely fast, we have no time to wait, but that dark green that you see down there on the bottom, we also have to start pulling emissions out of the atmosphere. And you know the best technology to do that? Plants, trees, technology that we already have. We don't need to produce new technologies to do this. We already have it in the ground. Right now, agriculture is a net source of emissions, a huge source, about 12.5 gigatons, which is that black arrow that you see right there. By 2030, if we want to stay on track for a 1.5 degree limit, we have to get to net zero by 2030. That's a reduction of 12.5 gigatons between now and 2030. That's 7 years only. By 2040, we have to have a net of -5 emissions being sequestered into the ground. By 2050, -10. That's a huge reversal of where we are today. And it has to happen in the next 37 years. No, sorry, I did the math wrong there. And there are huge opportunities with food here. What this figure shows is that of all the natural opportunities for using nature, 80% of all opportunities comes directly from food systems. Climate smart farming has a huge opportunity. Diet shifts and food loss and waste has a huge opportunity. IPLC rights and resources, climate critical protected areas, all of that, 80% of all opportunities that come directly from nature comes from food systems. So if we do not transform food systems, we will not be able to achieve Paris. Now I think that if you've been coming to these COPs for a while, if you've been reading the IPCC, we have a pretty good understanding at the global level of how we're supposed to do this. We understand the targets, we understand the urgency. So the global implementation, what we have to do, I think we've solved. We also know that a food systems approach is absolutely critical to this. That means we need to shift diets. We need to reduce food loss and waste. We need to change how we produce our food. And all three of those actions are necessary. We can not only focus on one. What we have a not quite as good of indication about is how it plays out in individual countries around the world, those individual puzzle pieces, and how we're looking at it is every single puzzle, every single country is a piece to the puzzle. And we need to start putting this puzzle together. Every single person sitting here in this room is a piece of that puzzle. And what our job needs to be is we start putting this puzzle together and figure out how this place-based implementation plays out in different countries around the world. Now, in some countries, approaches are not going to be the same. In some countries, support for smallholder farmers will be the single most important lever that we can pull on in that country to transform that food system. In other countries, it's going to be high-tech methods. It's going to be the most important lever that we have to pull on. And in other countries, it's going to be an increasing diversity of crops, of the biodiversity we have on the ground. The lever that we pull on depends on the country and the food system type that we're looking at. And this is something that at WWF we're starting to wrap our heads around and truly understand. It's a huge jigsaw puzzle, but this is something that we are focusing on in the years to come. So for this side event that we want to work on, we want to constantly be asking ourselves this question right here. How do we solve the great food puzzle? What is the role of the individual countries, and what is the role of each one of us sitting here in this room and watching online? What is your role to play in this puzzle? If you want to learn more, you can look it up here. We just launched our report 3 weeks ago, but I think today we are going to tease that out through a conversation that we're going to have with some wonderful individuals sitting here in this room. So thank you, everybody. Zhao, over to you.
Fantastic work, Brent. Thank you so much. And this is a really nice segue to the panelists, because we're going to hear stories that change the food system on the ground, stories that help us resolve this puzzle. So without much further ado, why don't I invite our panelists to the stage. First, I'd like to invite Maria Estrella Penunia. We call her Esther Penunia. She is with the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development. Esther, please, thank you for being here with us. I'd also like to call Christine Abwami. Christine is with the Uganda Small Scale Farmers Association. Christine, very welcome. The next one is Richard Kachungu. Richard is with the Young Emerging Farmers Initiative from Zambia. Welcome, Richard. I'd also like to invite Matt Wilson with the Sikangu Lakota people. we Lemon Wintu tribe, you have to teach me later, from the US, and Monica Yader, the founder of the Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative in Kenya. Welcome, Monica. Welcome, everybody. So let me start asking a question. Esther and I have worked together for nearly 2 years. Online. It's the first time that we see each other in person during the UN Food Systems Summit. I had the pleasure, as I mentioned, to lead Action Track 3 on how to boost actions for nature-positive production at scale. And Esther was the lead in the summit with other colleagues to design and develop an agroecology coalition. So Esther, why don't you tell us, delighted to see you, why don't you tell us how does agroecology work in your part of the world, in the Philippines, please?
Okay, thank you for the question, Joe. It's really nice to see you in person. And maybe just a brief overview. I'm with the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development. We are a farmers organization. We have members in 16 countries in Asia, and our membership is composed of small-scale women, men, and young farmers. We're engaged in crops, in livestock, in fisheries, forestry, herding, and pastoralism. Okay, so let me first start because the session title is Just Transition. No, just transition. So what do we mean by just? No, in our organization, just means having rights, promoting our rights as persons, as citizens, as farmers, especially in 2018, the UN declared a UN Declaration of the Rights of Peasants. Okay? And what do we mean by transition? Where to transition? So it's very important to know that Asia is the home of the Green Revolution in the 1960s. Many of us use this approach, and we know it was been good in some, but it also was bad. No? So we would like to transition to agroecology, and for us it meant being able to do integrated, diversified, organic farming, sustainable fisheries, and sustainable forestry. So let me go to the stories. Is that okay? So in last year, the Ramon Magsaysay Awards, that's the Nobel Prize in Asia, was given to a small-scale fisher folk. Okay? Why? Because he started mangrove reforestation in the Philippines, in his village in 1994. And in 2021, he was able to mobilize fisher folks in the whole province to do mangrove reforestation, from 50 hectares in his village to more than 500 hectares in the whole province. And we did that through just a very simple agroecological approach, mangrove reforestation. And when the people saw that mangroves were bringing the fish back, then he was able, through his organization, to stop illegal fishing in the area. He was able to mobilize his villagers to really have a very strong organization to patrol the fisheries against illegal fishers and commercial trawlers. So right now, there is increase in income, okay, triple the what they have been receiving before, and there was triple increase in their fish catch. And they're not just doing catching the fish, but because they have a strong cooperative with partners processing their fish. They have cold storage facilities already through their partners. So that is one very example that I would like to tell you, fisheries, because this year is the International Year of Artisanal Fisher Folks.
Wow, thank you very much, Esther. You gave a round of applause for Esther. You touched upon something that is really, really crucial for food systems transformation. When we talk about food systems, most of us talk about land. So bringing that aquatic foods and blue foods perspective in the context of agroecological production. And you touched upon several of the 13 principles of agroecology in your talk. So thank you very much, Esther. That was super, super helpful. Now I'd like to go to Christine. Christine, we've seen in Brent's presentation that support to small-scale farmers is super critical for the transition that we want in the food system to keep it on the 1.5 degree pathway and also to reverse the curve on biodiversity loss. So tell us about your work and bring us some examples about what you do on the ground, please.
I thank you so much. I'm Christine Nabwami, a small-scale farmer from Uganda and a board member of ESAF Uganda. It's a farmer organization. So if farmers are to be felt in the food puzzle, in solving the food puzzle, it has to begin with the farmer. This is a scenario where a farmer has to greatly be involved in such a way. As we are beginning our farming, our production processes, right from preparation of the land, it has to be solving the food puzzle. Because as we are preparing, the practice has been spraying using chemicals to dry off the land, to make it easier for cultivation. But now we are transiting to using efforts to applying organic manure, to slashing, not burning, because I think burning will help us reduce the temperatures, and we make sure that at preparation stage everything is done right. When it comes to planting, we are now trying to revive back the indigenous seed. We have to use the right seed. That is what contains the dietary nutrients that we want to have to solve the food puzzle. So the efforts, the support should be in finding the real seed, the seed that we used to have. By the way, it has gone extinct. And we have to use the knowledge from elders so that they help us identify the right seed. Because now the hybrids, the improved seed look almost alike the indigenous seed we had. So we have to first replant until we reach the actual seed that we want, trying out so many varieties. From the seed, we go to the mulching, the weeding, the doing what. It also has to be done in the other kind of way that our ancestors used to do it. It is quicker for farmers when they use the spraying, but the spraying is what is putting us to this whole lot of the trash we are now getting ourselves into. So even in weeding, we have to accept, by the way, farmers are becoming lazy. The technology has made farmers lazy. But we have to apply human efforts if we want to go back to this. So the weeding stage has to be so organic and so natural to us, whereby we have to get directly involved in the soil. We have to interact with the soil to make the good weeding that we want to see. And we have another challenge when it comes to soil cover. By the way, we no longer have the grass that we have to use for soil cover. The water catchments, the traps, the what, they are no longer existing. The lands are too dry. So we have to revive back the soil fertility. By then, for a farmer to know that you have fertile soils, you could come across caterpillars and these other walking insects. It is up to you either to rush when you find a caterpillar, but today you can dig the whole acre and you find only one caterpillar, which shows those are the warning systems that showed that we had fertile soils, but we can no longer find caterpillars, which shows that the soil is unfertile. Then when it comes to harvesting, we have a challenge, Brent. Post-harvest is a problem. We don't have the right taplings. For example, the taplings where we can dry our produce. We dry our produce on the ground, which creates aflatoxins, and this makes us uncompetitive in the markets. So the aflatoxins are affecting farmers, but it's because of the post-harvest handling. We no longer have granaries where we could store the granaries and storage facilities where we could have the handling done well. So even the process of storage is a challenge. And when we come to the market, we no longer have certified good produce. When we enter the market, during the transportation process, we face losses, especially when you're taking vegetables to the market. By the time you reach the market, they've already, what do they call them, when they become very weak and they are no longer nutritious. So you're now having loss, and the damage is not unrecoverable. When we look at these other foods, when you reach the market, the moisture, the temperature, the moisture, something to do with moisture or temperature, is no longer at the degree acceptable in the market. So given the moisture content, you can't sell. You sell cheaply. So the whole process that solves the food puzzle still has gaps. And these are the gaps that we have to address right from the beginning. And we follow up steps to see that by the time we reach consumption, by the time we reach the market, by the time we want to be certified, at least we are at the same level with the market and the consumers of our produce. So the process is still having gaps that we have to count down slowly until we reach the success.
Christine, thank you very much. This is such a rich story because, Christine, you connected us first with ancestral knowledge, right? To produce the food that is going to be consumed later. You showed the fragilities of the market and ways in which, with little support, you could resolve the issue of food loss. You know, because in a world where about 10% of the planet suffers from hunger and malnutrition, we cannot afford to lose anything. So you just gave us a wonderful picture of the state of the food system and one of the ways in which we can resolve it. So thank you for contributing to resolving the puzzle. Thank you very much. Now let me go over to Richard. Richard, I have a question for you because it's like, you know, when I look around in the world, and I'm from Brazil, I see that happening. The youth are leaving the countryside, right? There is literally an exodus of youngsters that do not want to work on the land or in the water, you know, for farming or fishing. Now, you are leading an organization that is focused on youth to reverse this exodus and actually retain them in the places where they are in an exciting way. Well, how do you do that? Please, welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Like you've stated, it's not easy. So I'm a co-founder of Young Emerging Farmers Initiative, an initiative in Zambia that has a network of over 500,000 young people. That's both in urban and rural areas. YEFI, Young Emerging Farmers Initiative, is working on looking at developing systematic ecosystems within the food system that will help young people find point of entry in the agriculture sector, as well as ensure that these young people find agriculture in a way, we use this word sexy. We are creating this and changing this notion where young people look at agriculture as something that they can do as a career as well as a livelihood as well. It's very important when you're engaging young people that you have an understanding that young people want something to be done now. They are looking to create resources now and they want to make money now. So when you look at building resilience and transformation and transition that we're talking about from the conventional way of doing agriculture to this sustainable way of doing agriculture, we are all aware that it requires patience at times. Because in my country, for instance, there's been a lot of soil degradation for the past, I think, a century and so forth. So the issue of sustainability for us requires patience. So even me, as Young Emerging Farmers Initiative, most of the projects that we do are built around how do we ensure that we restore these soils, because our target is to ensure that this soil are taken care of. We bring back the diversity that it requires to be able to be conducive enough for the plants that are supposed to be put on those particular areas. So for us, young people are a pinnacle of this sector, because we are looking at a sector which has opportunity to actually create employment. And we're not looking at just production. We look at it holistically through the value chain. How do we ensure that young people find a point of entry along the value chain? But it's also important to highlight the fact that most young people don't find agriculture as something that they can do, and they don't look at it as a sexy sector per se. So as Young Emerging Farmers Initiative, we build this ecosystem around market models that are responsive to young people, as well as financial models that are also responsive to the young people's needs. Because I think it's very important to highlight that most young people have a challenge to actually start up in agriculture, because they don't have the capacity anyway. Majority of them finish school, they have no collateral, they don't have anything that they can use to have access to these resources. So as an organization, we are in the middle of actually a difficult situation, trying to encourage more young people to enter into this sector, and then looking at how we transition as well from sustainable production, knowing that young people are not patient enough to go in this particular sector. So for us, it's very critical that we go back to the pillar of the food system, who is the farmer. And this is how we approach all our projects that we do, even engaging young people, to say, how do we ensure that a farmer is resilient and to climate shocks and is able to earn income in that particular undertaking? And it is built around ensuring that we have a systematic approach, a real cost analysis approach to the situation, because I think most of the times farmers do complain in terms of the prices that they are offered and the resources that they earn from this particular undertaking. So for us, young people, how we are engaging young people, we are using an approach where we look at the market models that will be responsive to that particular undertaking that they are doing. So we're looking at ensuring that we engage partners that are within the food system, that is looking at off-takers that will be able to, like for instance, create markets for a particular agricultural commodity that is produced sustainably, for instance. Because I think, for example, I can give you an example of a project that we have in Central Province, surprisingly in partnership with WWF. So we are working with farmers that are, most of them are beekeepers. So the idea was to create a systematic financial model and as well as market model that will enable these young people to continue engaging in agriculture, as they are the ones that are actually struggling to find employment and so forth. So for us, we looked at how do we find a buyer that will offer a right price for that farmer to stick in this particular sector, because beekeeping has also created an alternative to conserve nature in this particular project. So we had to look at who is going to support that, and that through the partnership with WWF and Gaia Education, we were able to get an off-taker from the UK who was willing to offer a better price. So with young people, for instance, you need to make sure that the income generation factor is factored when you are designing the project, all the project models that you are looking at. Young people would want to know when exactly they will earn that income, and if it takes longer, it might discourage them to actually undertake, because as I said, we all know what it means to transition, and that might take a little bit of time. I think for now, that's what I say.
Thank you very much. That is another super important story, because my takeaway from that is that in a world where the youth are leaving the countryside, there's a real exodus, you know. So we question globally who is going to be the next generation of farmer, and here you are helping the youth in the countryside have, as part of the way that they have the choices for self-determination, by looking into the market and by looking into the economic conditions to retain them, for them to stay, right, and respond to their own wishes about the choice of staying in the field. So thank you very much, Richard, for sharing that with us. Now let me pass to Matt Wilson. Matt, what is intriguing to me, you are from South Dakota, right? And you are in the middle of an industrial, where agriculture at the industrial scale is happening, and you created an oasis of hope. I would be interested to hear about this oasis that you created, because it's fascinating. So share with everyone the story that I heard from you already. Welcome.
Thank you. Haumadakapi, Matthew Wilson Amachapulo, Chante Washena Pechuzapulo, Sichangu Lakota Mokoche Himataham. Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Wilson. I actually am not a member of the Winnemem-Wintu tribe. I belong to the Sichangu Lakota Nation. We're an indigenous people based out of South Central South Dakota on the Rosebud Reservation. So back home on my homelands, there was a lot of food that was being produced, actually. There was actually a lot of food that was being produced by non-indigenous people, but that food was going elsewhere. We did not see any of that food that was being grown in our homelands. And those lands were being leased, like I said, by non-indigenous people. And then for my community as well, we wanted to make sure that we empowered them to be an active role and really shape our food system. So how do we do that? We started with education. We talked about how this food system that we're in right now, it didn't just happen by chance. It was designed that way. It was designed to do exactly what it's supposed to do, be very extractive. And so what we did is that we asked our community members, what kind of future do they want to see for the next 7 generations? My people have always thought generations ahead into the future. We've always also thought in a systematic way as well. And so we asked them, what do they want to see? And so they said they want more local food production, more local food access. And they also wanted to see a revitalized relationship with the buffalo. Lakota people are buffalo people. We have a really strong spiritual connection with buffalo. But I'll start with our food system first. And our focus was less on food security and more so on food sovereignty, being able to teach our people how to produce their own food. My people aren't traditionally farmers. We're hunter and gatherer people. And so we are learning how to farm. And so we are teaching community members how to grow their own food. We launched a beginning farmer apprenticeship program 3 years ago, really aimed at increasing the amount of local foods being produced by increasing the amount of local food producers, tribal producers. And so we work with them, and they work with us throughout the year, and they work with us at our farm and to learn different kind of practices. I don't want to say regenerative agriculture, I know that's the buzzword, but we're teaching them indigenous lifeways, which I'll just say regenerative agriculture is an appropriation of indigenous lifeways. We've been doing this work and in this way for time and millennia, time immemorial. And so we are taking our way, how we view the land and our relationship with the land and with each other, and applying it to agriculture, and really using that to empower our people so that they have a say in what kind of foods they want to see for themselves and how it's being produced and where. On the other hand, with buffalo, there was a mass extinction of buffalo, or not extinction, but a systemic slaughter of buffalo aimed at really forcing indigenous people on the prairies into dependency. When we were forced onto reservations, we lost that connection with the buffalo. And so 2 years ago, at the height of the pandemic, we launched our Wolokota Regenerative Buffalo Project. I think soon to be in the world's largest indigenous-owned buffalo herd in the world. And that is something that we asked our community, and this is what they wanted to see, is that relationship being revitalized. And buffalo isn't just a protein source for us. Buffalo is more than that. There are original teachers. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so there are original teachers, and we look to them to learn how to be a good relative, how to be stewards of this land. And so after 2 years of having buffalo back on our homelands, we are seeing, triple impacts. We're seeing the economical impacts. We're seeing our community members being able to purchase buffalo meat again, have access to buffalo meat again. Culture as well. We're seeing a traditional indigenous food knowledge being practiced again, that's being taught from elders to the next generation of Sitranga people. As well as ecological impacts. We're seeing a decrease in invasive species, increase in biodiversity. This is more indigenous foods that we're seeing more on our lands again.
Man, thank you very much. And it was we heard the message. Big round of applause to you. You cut through. It's not noise. It's like they're doing the same thing as we are doing here, right? So it's everyone talking about for a brighter future for everyone. But I was very impressed that you and Christine, you come from such a distance from each other, yet both of you relied on very similar solutions for the puzzle by bringing in the ancestral knowledge, the traditions, in totally different contexts. So just, as we begin to resolve the puzzle, we can build on each other's stories, build on each other's experiences to deliver a greater good for society. So we are going to explore a little bit more on this. But before much further ado, let me now turn to Monica Yater. Monica, what is the nexus for the work that you do with women and girls for everything that you heard here, especially on agroecology? Where is the connection? Tell us your story, please.
Good evening, and thank you. The noise is a bit low. My name is Monica Yator. I'm the founder Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative. And the foundation came in after so many inequalities, especially among the women in my community, coming from a pastoralist community where patriarchy is real and the owners of land are men. So I've been working on advocacy for long, that is gender inequality, campaigns against stereotypes, but that to me was not right. I realized that there are so many SDGs that we are not looking back, SDG 1, SDG 2, SDG 3. So how can I talk about SDG 5 when I'm not addressing SDG 1, which is critical, especially to household, where a woman is the breadwinner, yet we have men. So women have to produce food, and the way of production was difficult because with the COVID pandemic, fertilizers went high, demand for farming also because men could rent out big land to investors, somebody who has a big money for conventional agriculture. So I said, no, why don't we train our women to start organic farming even at small scale so that we reduce the burden of them buying vegetables for daily basis, because vegetable, that is almost $1, especially if you have bigger family of 6 to 5 kids. So I said, why don't we reduce the burden of them buying? So we introduced agroecology training to them. I started with 20 women. Every Sunday after church, I gather them. We identify one of the needy, maybe a disabled mother or a widow. We start our demonstration farms there. We start by first saving water because most of the households are manyata, so we don't have roofs. So it is a touched grass and smeared with the mud. So we had to now save water by digging small pans. We bought polythenes. We start saving water because in place I come from, it rains once or twice a year. So we start again doing, making swells, digging swells deep, like 40 feet down, so that when there's a lot of flash flood, there's water saved on the soil. So that saved us a lot. We started now farming, and women realized that they can make crop farming as a earning for something. So we started now doing marketing for organic foods, so that women can now earn from organic products they're making. So in the market, we have organic stalls for kales, for onions, for tomatoes, and people flooded now to organic stores because they know organic food are free from pesticide, free from other chemicals that is being brought now. So again, out of that, we train them how to save seeds, because there is a lot of marketing now with the corporates. We have Syngenta in my village. They have demo farms to market their own seeds, but we train women to save their own seeds after harvest. And we have our traditional way of saving seeds. We put them on the roof at the kitchen, in the kitchen, so that it does not get moist. So the same seed will be used next time to transplant. So we reduce the burden of buying seeds which are not sustainable, because the seeds we buy, they either germinate or they die in the soil. So the indigenous seeds are very resilient. We also train our women how to start now sharing, co-creative, such that when they have farms, they come together, like 30 of them. They can manage to dig a farm, they can do mulching, they can even share the seeds that you don't have. If you don't have sorghum, if you have wheat, if you have maize, if you have beans, and we treat them a lot on those organic principles, the agroecology principles, the mulching, intercropping with the herbs, so that we reduce the cost of even fertilizers. And in our villages, we have herbal trees. We use the sodo maple, neem, we mix them with aloe vera to make organic pesticide, and it is so productive to us. So we tell women, why don't we have to buy them? And we have our own indigenous knowledge of how to make these seeds. Also, in my community, from a pastoralist community, there's a way we can save meat for a long time. We just cut them into small pieces, like shreds, and then we dry them. And we eat them up to 1 year. And that is what has made us sustainable to climate change. Also, another initiative that we do, I saw that through my mother, is old now, 89. My mother used to plant a lot of bananas. And the idea of putting swells, is that what I learned, but I'm a trained farmer culture. I went to school now to learn that. But I see what my mother used to do. So I tell these women, young mothers as me, I'm a mother. So I tell them, if my mother would manage to feed all of us, I'm a number 6 in my family, and we never went hungry without food. But you can see now, the society, the young mothers and this generation, they don't want to work, and we have natural resource, which is land. And we practice organic farming, we can get a lot out of that. People now are aware and conscious of what they are eating. So if we market organic foods, and if we market organic farming, people will go to organic farming. I even encourage youth to start organic farming because the market is out there. People are running away from conventional agriculture because they want to die. We don't want to die of diseases, they don't know where they're coming from. So we are advocating to eat what we know, grow what you eat, and grow your own food. So that is now making us advance our agroecology campaigns, and I'm happy. I've listened a lot at COP, and the voice now and the message now is COP for implementation. And so we need to advance agroecology and organic farming, and also integrate now mitigation, which is now indigenous tree planting. I've heard about carbon sequestration. That is the next thing I'll go and do, to integrate our agroecology farms with the indigenous seeds and beekeeping. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was such a powerful story, especially because it connects, gender equity, and the power of women and girls to advance agroecology, which is one of the solutions, the big solutions, and offers a lot of learnings to the food puzzle, the great food puzzle. Now, thank you. The question now I have for you. You've heard from 5 different countries and 5 different stories of what individuals, these fabulous individuals, can do in their own context, their own realities. Now, what insights, this is a conversation not to bombard everyone with questions, but what insights can you draw from the stories that you heard? And what insights can you have to give them about what they said? So now let me look at you. Who would like to go first? About what you learned, about what you heard? Please.
Thank you so much for your inspiring stories. Really interesting to hear from all of you. I don't have any insights to share. I think all the insights come from all of you. But I'd be really interested to know, hear from you of what structurally you think needs to change in either your countries or internationally to help you to replicate or support or scale up the type of initiatives, brilliant initiatives that you've all set out for us, articulated to us today.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go with that? Scaling, yeah, Esther, please. What structural changes needs to happen so that the important experiences that you shared can scale up?
Okay.
Yeah.
So for us, our first learning is we need to organize ourselves. We need to strengthen our organizations and cooperatives, and strengthening them means giving them the capacities, having so many knowledge exchanges, farmer-to-farmer exchanges where they share their experiences and lessons learned. Okay? Because once they are strong, they are able to engage the government to claim their rights. Okay? And they are able to also provide services to their other members, especially economic services to their members. So that is the first thing at our level. So if you could organize from the village up to the town, up to the national, and then have connections or networking at the global level, that will be good because we can then influence policies from local to national and to global. That's the first. The second is we are here because of one big issue, and it's on climate financing. Okay? We know there's climate finance, but statistics have shown that only 1.7% of climate finance goes directly to small-scale farmers, pastoralists, herders, and fishers, and that is not right. That is not right. So as one structural change would be for these various climate finance mechanisms to be something, their procedures, for example, their priorities would be focused and would be directed for us to have that access in climate finance. Because if we do have it, farmers' organizations' capacities can be built so that they can manage this money, and they have shown examples. They can manage this money so that they can effectively build the capacities. We can effectively build the capacities of our members and engage the government again. So two things for me.
Please, yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. For me, I think from my country perspective, I think what needs to be strengthened, and I think for now, I think it starts with regional specific adaptation strategies, whether from national up to regional level. That specifically, I think, emphasizes on strengthening infrastructure and technological innovation, especially where young people are concerned. Because I think there's this lag between technology and infrastructure within the food system from where I'm coming from. And that would also help ensuring that as we transition, I think it might ease a lot of things, especially for government and other players in the food system. And I think I can also reiterate what I think Esther has just said. I think the finance aspect is very critical. I think we've been emphasizing that to adapt, we need resources, and we need enough resources that is accessible, as well as adequate and predictable for us to project in how we're planning. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other contributions from the panel, or we can, yep.
Yeah, I just got one thing to add, and I'm just speaking from the perspective of my nation. I think something we need to think through is philanthropy and how that's done. And I would also like to encourage or urge global investors and organizations to really think about investing in indigenous people in each of their individual nations. I think for indigenous people, especially in the United States, we're always grouped together under one racial identity as Native Americans or Alaska Natives, and I think a lot of times there's so many people, there's so many different nations, indigenous people have their own, customs, cultures, and languages. It's hard to split a certain amount of money up between all these individual nations. So I would urge you all to really invest in and look at individual indigenous nations.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, maybe lastly, what we need to do is lobby, especially the national adaptation plans and NAP processes. In my country, we're still struggling, especially putting the term agroecology. Even in the negotiation rooms, the terms alone can even disqualify a good strategy and innovation to sustain livelihood. So food system again need to go into these NAP processes, and also how do we make sure that our government reasons with us and buys our idea, because communities are suffering. As we speak now in my community, last Friday, a woman died. He was going to fetch firewood and collapsed, not firewood, water, and collapsed and died. When the postmortem was done, the lady has not eaten for the last 3 days. So that means there's anger is killing our people, and the government is not aware. So we need to do a lot of lobbying and advocacy, and also donors should support bottom-up approach, rural solutions, so that we feed our people first, instead of us waiting for another COP 2028, of which we don't know. Maybe we'll have lost a lot of lives again. So that is the strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your insights. Actually, please.
Thank you so much. As for Uganda's setting, I'm thinking we need to centralize knowledge. We have to go out and map out for the elderly and the aging, so that they can share with us those practices before they actually leave. So we need them to share with us how it used to be, how they could actually make it to an extent that they were resilient through, because they used much human effort. The labor was too intensive, but they managed to walk through. So we need to tap out that information from them, centralize it, so that even the coming generations can use that same knowledge. So we need those cultural practices documented well, and put it maybe in a museum where you can go sit and study by yourself and sort what works best for you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Christine. That's great. Let me, we don't have much more time, but I would like to hear now, go back to the beginning of this conversation and put Brent on the spot, if I may, Brent. What you heard from these 5 stories, because these are local stories and they made the connection to national and global, how do they help resolve the food puzzle, if I may?
I was struck with the puzzle pieces exist. They're out there, right? We just need to figure out how to start putting it together. Not only at the local level, but then starting to connect it, and just hearing all of you guys talk about your stories and how similar they are, and the lessons learned, and how much we already know. We're not talking about building a new puzzle. We're talking about just putting the puzzle that is already there together, right? And we have to start doing that, and it's going out and searching for those pieces and putting them together and scaling it. That's what I was struck with. Just the amazing stories that we're hearing again and again. And I wish we had more time. I wish we had like 2 hours to just start to tease this out. And I guess, I feel like it's the start of the journey for us, right? It's like we're starting to sort the pieces, we're starting to organize it, and I'm just deeply humbled and honored to be on this journey with each one of you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Brent. Before we close, I'd like to hear, like, if you had one word, so this will be like 5 words, that it's only one, that you would like this audience to leave this room inspired by what you do. What would the word be? Any one of you can take the mic and say your one word that is inspiring for us here.
Not to get compromised. Agroecology is the way to go.
Great. That's good. Other words of inspiration here?
Invest in agroecology by and with farmers through their organizations and cooperatives.
Very good. Great message. What other messages would you like to give, Monica? Perhaps you that you have the mic.
Don't be compromised. Agroecology is nature-based solution, regenerative agriculture, traditional agriculture. So let's invest on sustainable farming.
Wonderful. Matt?
I would say action. I think we've done a lot of talking. Now we need to do the work, and you do it now. It's urgent.
Exactly. Thank you, Matt.
I think for me, it wouldn't necessarily be one word. I think 2. I would say meaningful engagement.
Wonderful. So engagement on action for agroecology, if we can summarize. And it's really interesting the way that this, your words came through, because I think they eventually respond to the question, what prevents your models, the wonderful solutions, they're not stories, by the way, we learned that these are solutions. What stands between the solutions and that you're giving and you're talking about from experience to the scale that the world needs? What is it? Agroecology, if I may, and I learned this from Esther and the Agroecology Coalition that we work together. Agroecology is based on 13 principles. When you read the 13 principles, nobody can disagree. What I see some disagreements happening is on the term agroecology, because it evokes different feelings of it. But the principles are so solid, and together they are a package that you cannot pick the principles. Together, they intend to break the systemic lock-ins that exist and the power relations that exist, that the solutions, the beautiful solutions that you presented here, do not reach the scale that is needed. So we need to work on actions on the ground with investment, with agroecology, with the resilience, but we also need to be in this global fora saying that the system that is in place is no longer acceptable for nature, for climate, and for people. Okay? So your stories are solutions that you bring to the table. So look, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for all of you who gave us the pleasure to listen to these fabulous individuals and leaders worldwide. And thanks, Brent, for the great framing on the food puzzle. Together, it's possible. Let's do it.
Thank you, Esther, for everything that you did for us. Christine,